I have to admit, when I first picked up the stack of sources for this deep dive, I genuinely thought I was reading a pitch deck for a summer blockbuster.
Oh, it totally reads like one. I mean, the sheer scale of it.
Right. We are talking about a scenario that has absolutely everything. There are wild elephants charged with killing a child. There are snake pits, poisoning, being thrown off cliffs.
And a villain who is so powerful, he literally controls the planetary systems. If you pitched this script in Hollywood today, they would probably tell you it's a bit too intense.
Exactly. But then, and this is where it really hooked me, as I kept reading through the text and the commentaries, I realized the action is almost a distraction. Because the protagonist, the one surviving all these assassination attempts, he's in some special forces soldier or, I don't know, a wizard with high-tech armor.
Yeah.
He's a 5-year-old boy.
Yeah, that is the hook right there. It completely subverts your expectations of what an action hero is.
And his survival has nothing to do with fighting back in the traditional sense. It seems to be about, well, a completely different visual and psychological operating system.
That is exactly the right way to frame it, because we aren't just looking at a myth today. We are looking at the story of Hiraṇyakaśipu, who is known as the king of demons, and his son Prahlāda. But our mission here isn't just to, retell a wild story.
Right. We are here to unpack the theological mechanics of Prahlāda's mind. The texts describe this as a deep study in spiritual stability.
Precisely.
We really want to know how a child mastered internal enemies, things like anger and greed, while facing literal, lethal external enemies. Because frankly, for you listening to this and for me, most of us lose our cool when the Wi-Fi goes down or someone cuts us off in traffic, let alone when we are being thrown into a snake pit.
It is a very fair point. We are looking for the practical application of what the texts call nirvaira, which means hostility toward no one. So I think we should dive straight into this cosmic anomaly.
Let's do it. Let's set the stage with the characters first, because
Yeah.
the contrast between them is just, it's violent. On one side, you have the father, Hiraṇyakaśipu.
He is a fascinating psychological case study. The sources describe him as the literal embodiment of kama.
Kama. That usually translates to lust or desire, doesn't it?
It does, but in this context, we need to think of it as an intense, burning material desire. Hiraṇyakaśipu is what I like to call the merchant of spirituality.
The merchant of spirituality. That's a really sticky phrase.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, look at his behavior. He performed these incredible, grueling austerities. He meditated for thousands of years, stood on one leg, gave up eating the whole 9 yards. But he didn't do it for enlightenment or to better himself.
He did it to get something.
Exactly. He did it to extract a contract from the universe. He worshipped Lord Brahma specifically to get material power and immortality.
So it's completely transactional. It's like, I pay with my pain, you pay me with power.
That's it. It is the ultimate hustle culture taken to a demonic extreme. He viewed the world entirely through the lens of domination. To him, everyone else was either a competitor to crush or a resource to be exploited. He controlled the universe, literally, yet the sources emphasized that he was a total slave to his own senses. He had everything outside, but absolutely nothing inside.
Which is such a massive irony. He's the king of the world, but he can't even control his own temper. And then, living in the exact same palace, you have his son, Prahlāda.
The total opposite. If the father is kama, Prahlāda represents akama.
Meaning desireless.
Yes, but we really need to be careful with that word. In the West, when we hear desireless, we tend to think of someone who is, lobotomized or inert like a stone, just sitting there staring blankly at a wall.
Right, no ambition, no drive. Just kind of floating through life.
But that is not Prahlāda at all. Akama here means he had no material ambition. He wasn't trying to exploit the world around him. The sources describe him as an anomaly, basically a reservoir of light appearing in a lineage of total darkness.
The text actually used a really specific Sanskrit term for his status, which I thought was super interesting. A Mahatma.
Yes, Mahatma. This is a crucial definition found in the Bhagavad Gita, verse 7.19. A Mahatma, or great soul, is incredibly rare. It is not just a nice guy or a good person. The text says this is someone who, after many, many births of searching, finally surrenders, seeing the supreme Vasudeva as the cause of all causes.
So he wasn't just a good kid who happened to be born to a bad dad. He was a highly advanced soul who was dropped straight behind enemy lines, essentially.
Precisely. And that brings us to the core conflict of the whole narrative. Hiraṇyakaśipu thought the enemy was outside. Anyone who challenged his throne was the enemy. But Prahlāda, even as a 5-year-old child, was teaching something incredibly radical. He taught that the real enemy is inside.
Okay, this is the part I really want to drill down into for everyone listening, this philosophy of enemies. Because, look, if someone tries to throw me off a cliff, I'm pretty sure they are the enemy. But Prahlāda says these external threats are imagined creations.
He does say that. And to understand how he can possibly mean that, we have to look at what he calls the six thieves.
The six thieves, okay.
Yeah. They are the internal forces that steal away our wealth. And he is not talking about your bank account or your crypto wallet. He is talking about your spiritual integrity, your peace of mind. These thieves are lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and jealousy.
Okay, I think I get anger and greed stealing your peace.
Right.
But how does illusion work as a thief? That seems a bit too abstract.
Illusion, or moha, is actually the ringleader of the whole gang. It steals your ability to see reality clearly. It convinces you that you are your body, or that your inherent value comes from your net worth or your job title. Once illusion steals your true perception, anger and greed step in to furiously defend that false identity.
So they work together as a coordinated gang.
They absolutely do. Think about it. If you are under the illusion that you need to be the most powerful or successful person in the room, then anyone who is better than you automatically triggers jealousy. If someone blocks your goal, that triggers anger. And if you actually get what you want, it just triggers greed for even more.
So they're all born from an uncontrolled mind. It is just a massive internal domino effect.
Exactly. And think about Prahlāda's formal education. The source material calls his school, which was run by his father's regime, the demoniac Ivy League.
I saw that in the notes. What exactly were they studying? Advanced Tyranny 101.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
His teachers, Sanda and Amarka, taught the standard curriculum of duality. It was basically Machiavelli for preschoolers. The syllabus was appease your friends, crush your enemies, accumulate power, divide and conquer. It is a very transactional, aggressive way of viewing the world.
Which, to be fair, is exactly how a lot of modern politics and corporate business works today. You network with people who can help you, and you destroy the competition.
It is. That is exactly why this ancient story resonates so much right now. But Prahlāda completely rejected it. He realized that this entire worldview is based on a fallacy. He taught that if you conquer those six internal thieves, if you master your own anger and your own greed, you become what the texts call equipoised. And when you are truly equipoised, you realize there are no external enemies.
That is such a heavy statement. There are no external enemies.
It is profound. But think about it logically. If you aren't driven by greed, you don't see other people as competitors for scarce resources. If you aren't driven by false prestige or ego, you don't see insults as attacks that need to be avenged. The enemy only exists because they threaten something our ego is desperately holding on to. If you hold on to nothing, who can threaten you?
Okay, that sounds fantastic in theory, but practically speaking, when I am hungry, I want food. When I am threatened, I feel fear. How did Prahlāda actually master his mind to that degree? Because the sources mention he was, I think the word translated to haunted.
Yes, the specific Sanskrit term is Krishnagrihatma.
Which translates to what exactly?
It literally means his soul was possessed or haunted by Krishna, but not in a creepy exorcist, scary movie way. Think of it more as total, unwavering absorption. You know when you are in a flow state, maybe you're coding or painting or running, and you just completely lose track of time and your physical body.
Sure, you forget to eat. You don't even feel the chair you were sitting in.
Right. Prahlāda was in a permanent divine flow state. And the sources use a really great, highly relatable analogy here about eating to explain the mechanics of this. This is actually the key to understanding how you and I can tackle things like greed in our own modern lives.
Would you please walk us through that? Because usually we just think spiritual life means violently repressing our desires. Like, I really want the cookie, but I won't eat the cookie because I am on a diet.
Right, and that is just repression. That is relying on pure willpower, and as we all know, that rarely works long term. Eventually, you snap and eat the entire box of cookies. The analogy given here is a hungry person eating a really good, satisfying meal. When you eat, three distinct things happen simultaneously.
Okay, what is step one?
1, you experience pleasure or satisfaction. That is the actual taste of the food on your tongue.
Got it. Step 2.
2, you get nourishment. That is the direct intake of energy, the physical filling of the belly.
And step 3.
3, you feel relief from hunger. And that relief is actually a form of detachment.
Oh, I see exactly where this is going.
Right. You don't have to force yourself to stop being hungry. You don't have to use massive willpower to eventually push the plate away. The hunger just vanishes naturally because you are full.
So Prahlāda wasn't sitting there in the palace thinking, man, I really want to play with those royal toys. Or I really want to rule the kingdom, but I shouldn't because I am a monk. He was already full.
Exactly. He was so incredibly nourished by this internal connection, this divine haunting, that the external toys, or in his father's case, the external power over the universe, just didn't look appetizing anymore. He looked at the throne of the universe and basically saw a child's cheap plastic trinket.
That is such a helpful, practical way to look at our own greed. You don't fight greed by just screaming at yourself to stop wanting things. You fight it by finding something better, something internally nourishing that makes the greed entirely irrelevant.
Precisely. You displace the lower taste with a higher taste.
But what about the fear aspect? Because let's go back to the literal snake pit for a second. Even if I am spiritually full, a snake bite still physically hurts. How does this operating system handle imminent, violent death?
This leads us to the second key analogy in the texts, the baby on the lap.
This one really struck me. It is so simple, but it explains so much about his mindset.
It is incredibly powerful. Imagine a very small child sitting securely on their mother's lap. The child doesn't worry about paying the mortgage. The child doesn't check the locks on the doors at night. The child doesn't even worry if there's a massive thunderstorm raging outside. Why?
Because the child knows the parent has it completely handled. The parent is the ultimate security system.
Yes. Prahlāda had that level of visceral, unquestioning trust. The source specifically notes it wasn't Harry Potter magic. He didn't cast a magical shield spell to deflect the poison. He simply didn't see the snakes or the charging elephants as threats. He saw them as the energy of the Lord.
And this is that state you mentioned earlier called nirvana.
Yes. Nirvana means without enemies. You cannot fear an enemy if you genuinely only see your best friend, the super soul, everywhere you look, even in the venomous snake, even in his own father, who is actively trying to murder him.
That is a radically different way to view the world. It completely rewires how you react to stress. But let's get to the climax of the action, because Hiraṇyakaśipu did not care about his son's enlightenment. He just wanted him dead.
He did, and this setup is fascinating because Hiraṇyakaśipu fully believed he was invincible. He had done his own extremely rigorous spiritual legal work. He had an ironclad contract, a benediction from Lord Brahma.
This is hands down my favorite part of the story. I call this the ultimate lawyer move. Let's break down the contract. Hiraṇyakaśipu had outlined some very specific loopholes he thought made him completely safe from death.
He was literally trying to cheat death with fine print. He essentially created a massive logic puzzle for the universe to solve. First, he asked for a benediction that he could not be killed by any man or any animal.
Okay, so he's covering the biological bases. Man or beast. Check.
He then asked not to be killed during the day or the night.
Covering the time of day. Check.
He asked not to be killed inside a residence or outside a residence.
Covering the location.
He asked not to be killed on the land or in the sky. And finally, just to be absolutely safe, he asked that he could not be killed by any weapon, living or dead.
He really thought of absolutely everything. In his mind, he had created a logical, cosmic impossibility for his own death. He is the undisputed king of the universe, he is immortal, and now he is finally going to kill his own son for insubordination.
And that extreme arrogance is his ultimate downfall, because he treated spirituality like a cosmic vending machine. You know, you put in the coin of severe austerity, and you demand the product of immortality, but you cannot trick the supreme.
So the Lord appears to save Prahlāda, and he doesn't just zap the demon with a lightning bolt from the sky. He appears as Nrisimhadeva.
Yes. He bursts violently out of a pillar in the assembly hall, which, by the way, perfectly proves Prahlāda's earlier point to his father that God is everywhere, even inside the stone structure of the building. Nrisimhadeva is a terrifying form that is half man and half lion.
Wait, let's check the legal contract. Half man, half lion. So, he is neither fully man nor fully animal. Loophole 1 closed.
Exactly. Then he grabs Hiraṇyakaśipu. It happens to be twilight, that perfect fleeting junction between day and night.
Neither day nor night. Loophole 2 closed.
He drags the struggling demon to the doorway of the Grand Assembly Hall.
Neither inside nor outside.
He places the demon securely on his lap to kill him.
Neither on the land nor in the sky. And wow, the baby on the lap analogy comes back in a really terrifying way for the father here.
It really does. It's a brilliant parallel. And finally, the weapon. Hiraṇyakaśipu specifically said no weapon, living or dead. Nrisimhadeva uses his nails. Nails are not manufactured weapons, and biologically speaking, they are considered dead, but they are still growing. It's a biological paradox.
That is just incredible. It really is the ultimate lawyer move. It honors the absolute letter of the law, the strict fine print of the benediction given by Brahma, but it completely and utterly destroys the spirit of the demon's intent.
It proves definitively that you cannot maneuver or loophole your way out of karmic responsibility or divine will. The source puts it so perfectly. Hiraṇyakaśipu spent his entire life trying to control the external universe, but was ultimately a pathetic slave to his own anger. Prahlāda controlled absolutely nothing externally. He was just a kid, but because he thoroughly mastered his senses, he conquered the Lord's heart.
And that brings us to the aftermath. The demon is dead, the dust in the assembly hall settles, and the Lord turns to this 5-year-old boy, Prahlāda, and effectively writes him a cosmic blank check. He says, ask for literally anything.
This is the final, ultimate test. This is where we see if Prahlāda has any hidden karma, any lingering trace of greed deep down. An ordinary person, even a very religious person, won't say, okay, great, my abusive dad is gone. Can I be king of the universe now? Can I have all his wealth? Can I just be safe forever?
But Prahlāda says no.
He completely refuses to be a merchant. He uses that specific Sanskrit word again, vinik. He says to the Lord, if I trade my devotion and service to you for a material reward, I am not a devotee, I am just doing business. This beautifully circles back to the distinction we made right at the start between the Father's transactional spirituality and the Son's pure, unmotivated devotion.
So what does he actually ask for? Because he does eventually make a request.
He asks for 2 things. First, he asks to simply remain a servant of his guru, Narada Muni. He wants to stay in the humble mood of service, not in a position of power. And second, and honestly, this is the most touching part of the whole epic, he asks for his father to be pardoned.
The man who literally tried to throw him in a pit of venomous snakes. The man who tried to poison his food and crush him with elephants.
Yes, because Prahlāda actually meant it when he said he had no enemies. He didn't secretly hate his father. He saw a soul that was tragically trapped by illusion, a soul entirely eaten up by those 6 thieves we talked about. He didn't want revenge. He genuinely wanted his abuser to be liberated.
And that brings us to a really powerful and frankly quite difficult modern application for you listening. The sources mention something called cutoff culture.
Right. Today, the prevailing advice in pop psychology and social media culture is very often protect your peace at all costs. If someone is toxic, block them, cancel them, cut them out of your life entirely. And look, in a mundane, practical sense, for your immediate physical or mental safety, that is often very valid advice.
Sure, you don't intentionally stay inside a burning building.
Exactly. But Prahlāda operates on a completely transcendental platform. He didn't want to go to the spiritual world alone.
He explicitly prays about this, doesn't he?
He does. He says, I do not wish to be liberated alone, leaving aside all these poor fools and rascals. He wasn't interested in a solitary, isolated peace. He realized that true spiritual mastery isn't just about saving yourself. It is having the immense internal strength to carry the burden for others.
Yeah.
Even the people who intensely annoy you, even the people who actively hurt you.
That is a seriously heavy lift. It completely challenges our modern definition of what peace actually is. We usually think peace means the total absence of trouble. Like if I just get rid of this toxic boss, I will finally have peace. If I just move to a quiet neighborhood away from everyone, I will have peace.
Exactly. But look at Hiraṇyakashipu's life strategy. He tried to get rid of every single trouble in the universe. He violently eliminated everyone who disagreed with him, and he was absolutely miserable and consumed by anxiety. Prahlāda, on the other hand, was in the middle of maximum trouble, literally being tortured and facing death, and he was perfectly peaceful.
So the real lesson here is peace is not the absence of trouble.
Peace is the presence of the divine. If you have that deep internal anchor, that eating the meal satisfaction we talked about, the external chaos of the world, simply cannot touch you.
It is all about that internal stability. Roots deep, branches high, as the source image described it.
Yes. If your roots are anchored deep in that trust, exactly like the baby resting on the lap, the violent storm happening up in the branches doesn't break you.
This has been such a fascinating look into the theological mechanics of a story I really thought I knew. We went from a summer action movie to a high-space legal thriller to a deep psychological study of the mind.
It really shows that these ancient texts aren't just entertaining fairy tales. They are highly practical manuals for how the human mind works and how to successfully navigate a world that is very often hostile to our spiritual growth.
So for you listening today, whether you are facing a literal physical enemy or just battling the everyday internal enemies of anger, greed, and anxiety, the overarching strategy is exactly the same. It is not about fighting the darkness directly with willpower. It is about turning on the light.
Well said.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, something that really struck me from the source material. We talked about Prahlāda's absolute refusal to leave the fools and rascals behind.
Yes, the ultimate challenge to our modern comfort zone.
Exactly. So here's the question to ask yourself. Who in your life are you leaving behind simply because they annoy you? And what would it actually look like to be strong enough to drag them with you toward the light? Because according to Prahlāda's standard, you haven't really made it until you bring someone else along.
That truly is the ultimate test of a Mahatma.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We will catch you on the next one.